For years, we've been hearing this promise, right? The technology is going to be the great equalizer. That all it takes is a smartphone or an internet connection to close that huge gap between, say, a booming city and a struggling rural town. But what if it's not that simple? What if the real key isn't just having the tech, but how it's actually used? Well, a pretty recent study dug into that exact question, and frankly, the answers they found, they're not what you might expect.
So this whole promise really comes down to tackling one major challenge: the digital divide. And look, this isn't just about who has the fanciest new phone. It's this gap between the haves and the have-nots when it comes to technology. Researchers have been saying for a while now that closing this gap is absolutely crucial for the economic and social progress of rural areas, especially in developing countries. That brings us to the million-dollar question. If you just drop the tools, the infrastructure, the computers, into a community, does that automatically make life better? Does it actually work? A really groundbreaking study from 2023 decided to find out by, going right to the source. Okay, so our search for answers takes us to this incredible place, central Sulawesi in Indonesia. Think rugged mountains, beautiful coastlines, and some seriously remote communities. It's the perfect real-world laboratory to test what kind of impact technology is really having.
And we're not talking about some small-scale experiment here. The researchers dug into data from over 1,800 villages. That is a massive scale. It gives us this incredible, detailed picture of what's actually moving the needle and, what's not.
So, to measure what success even looks like, they use this really cool metric called the Village Development Index, or VDP for short. Basically, it's a single score from 0 to 1 that gives you a snapshot of a community's total well-being, not just how much money it has.
And as you can see, this VDP score isn't just one thing. It's a mix of three key pillars: the village's economic health, its social fabric, services and community, and its environmental sustainability. So it's a really balanced way of looking at what makes a village truly thrive.
So what they find? Well, the average score across all those villages was 0.67. In official terms, that classifies the typical village there as developing. So that's our baseline. But the real question, the one we're all here for, is what can push that number up? What actually helps these villages move from just developing to really flourishing? All right, so with that baseline set, the researchers could finally get to the good stuff. They started to figure out which specific types of technology were actually making a difference and bumping up that development score. They looked at four main things. First, how good is the internet signal? Is it a speedy 4G connection or basically nothing at all? Second, are there public internet spots like an internet cafe? Third, how many people in the village actually own a mobile phone? And last, does the local village government office have computers and internet access? This central hub of the community. And the results? They were pretty striking. Three of those factors had a clear, positive impact. The better the signal quality, the higher the village's score. The more people who owned a mobile phone, the better the village did. And yep, giving the village office the right tech and internet access also gave the score a significant boost. And that last point about the village offices, that's not just a fluke. It actually backs up what other researchers have found. For example, a study back in 2014 pointed out that it's not enough to just have tech in an organization. You've got to use it strategically, every day, to really see performance get better. It just makes sense, right? When the government can deliver better services, the whole community wins. But, and this is where the story gets really interesting. While three of those technologies were clearly helping things, one of them had, no measurable impact at all. It was like a ghost in the machine. It was there, but it wasn't doing anything. So just take a second to think about it. You've got signal quality, public internet cafes, personal phones, and tech in the government office. Which one do you think had absolutely zero effect? The answer is probably not the one you guessed. It was the public internet facilities. That's right, the study found that having an internet cafe or some kind of public computer room had no significant effect on that village development index. It turns out that just building a computer lab for the community, by itself, just doesn't move the needle. So, what's the big takeaway here? Well, it seems like it's all about personal and official empowerment. A strong signal that reaches your phone, you actually owning that phone, and the local government having the tools to do its job. A shared computer in a room somewhere, it just doesn't pack the same punch. Okay, so what does all this mean for the future?
How can we use this amazing data to build smarter policies and, ultimately, smarter villages? Let's unpack the blueprint for success that comes out of this research.
The study's authors really nailed it. They said merely developing ICT infrastructure is insufficient. It is necessary to implement strategies that encourage the use of ICT. In other words, just building the highway isn't enough. The real magic happens when people and their governments actually start using it in their daily lives. So, based on all this data, a pretty clear three-step plan emerges. First, prioritize the signal. A strong, reliable 4G network is way more valuable than a building full of computers. Second, empower the local government. You got to give those village offices the tools they need to serve their community better. And third, and this is the really critical part, you have to foster adoption. Create programs that get both citizens and officials to actually use this technology every single day.
So if you're going to walk away with a few key points, here they are. First, it's the tech that empowers individuals and their local government that matters most, not shared public rooms. Second, the biggest positive impacts were on the economic and social health of these villages. Third, it seems like letting citizens lead the way on adoption works better than forcing it from the top down. And finally, the big one. Closing the digital divide is not just about giving people access, it's about making sure they can effectively use it.
And that brings us right back to where we started. Yeah, a smartphone can help build a village, but it can't do it alone. It needs a good signal, it needs a real purpose, and it needs to be in the hands of people who are ready and able to use it. Which leaves us with one final thought. If technology is just the tool, what does this study tell us is the most important instruction for actually building that better future? Maybe it's that the most powerful technology isn't the one we invent, but the one we all learn how to use together.